The sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown apartment, reflecting off the glass walls and bouncing into my office. I sat behind my mahogany desk, fingers brushing over the smooth silk of my blouse, the hum of the city beneath me barely audible over the steady pulse of my thoughts. My phone buzzed, and I saw her name flash across the screen. Mom.
It was her birthday.
My chest tightened, a familiar ache blooming just beneath my ribs. Memories rose unbidden. The day she told me, so casually, that the best gift I could give her was to leave her life. Her words had stung then, like ice on bare skin, but today they echoed differently. Less like rejection, more like a challenge I had accepted without ever realizing. I leaned back, tracing the rim of my coffee mug, the aroma sharp, grounding. I was successful, maybe too successful, and yet there were truths I kept buried. The world saw the poised, confident woman who had clawed her way up the ladder, but my family never witnessed the nights I sat in silence, questioning whether leaving was courage or cowardice. The message on my screen was simple, innocent even. Happy birthday, dear. Hope we can talk soon. A flicker of irony passed through me. After all these years, she had no idea what I had built, what I had become without her. And suddenly, I realized I was ready, not just to confront her, but to show her the woman she had once asked to leave. I remember that day with startling clarity, the kind that doesn't fade no matter how much time passes. I was 22, fresh out of college, full of ideas and ambition, standing in our small kitchen where the air always smelled faintly of her perfume mixed with burnt toast. Mom looked at me over her coffee cup, her eyes sharp, almost calculating. "I think the best gift you could give me this year," she said, her voice casual but icy, "is to leave my life. Just go. Figure things out on your own." My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the counter. My throat tightened, the words choking me before they even fully registered. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg her to reconsider, but I didn't. I only nodded, the lump in my throat heavy and impossible to swallow. I remember walking out that day, the cold wind biting my cheeks as I closed the door behind me. The neighborhood smelled of fresh-cut grass and gasoline from passing cars, completely indifferent to the storm inside me. Every step felt like both punishment and liberation. The world suddenly seemed larger and colder, and I had no one to rely on but myself. Grandma had seen the fallout before anyone else. She handed me a small, worn notebook filled with quotes, advice, and stories from women in our family who had refused to be confined by expectations. "You have your own story to write, Emily," she whispered, pressing it into my hands. "Don't let anyone else hold the pen." I clutched that notebook as I sat on the bus heading back to my tiny apartment, feeling the weight of loneliness settle over me. But within that heaviness, a spark flickered, a determination that I would not be broken by someone else's idea of love. That moment marked the beginning of my independence. I told myself, as the city blurred past the window, that leaving didn't mean giving up. It meant I was choosing myself, choosing my future, choosing to prove that her rejection was not the end of my story, but the painful prelude to the life I was about to build. And just like that, I stepped forward, trembling, uncertain, but unyielding. The first weeks after leaving were brutal. I worked 3 jobs just to keep my tiny studio apartment afloat, learning quickly how to budget every dollar and make it stretch. My hands ached from typing, answering phones, and running errands, but each exhaustion-laden day carried a quiet thrill, the knowledge that I was building my own life. One evening, exhausted after a 12-hour shift at a marketing firm, I stayed late to organize the office files. That's when I met Clara, a seasoned executive who noticed the determination behind my tired eyes. "You have potential," she said simply, handing me a notebook like a lifeline. "Don't let anyone else define your limits." Her words, casual yet sincere, hit harder than any pep talk I'd ever heard. Clara became my mentor, guiding me through strategies, networking, and the subtle politics that came with success. I spent long nights hunched over spreadsheets, absorbing every lesson, learning every shortcut, trying and failing repeatedly. The first contract I landed on my own was modest, barely enough to cover rent, but I felt it in my bones. This was mine. No one had given it to me. No one could take it away. Then came the next one, slightly bigger, and the one after that. Each small victory stitched a new layer of confidence over the insecurity I carried from my family. I learned to navigate a world that constantly underestimated me. Men assumed I was an assistant when I walked into meetings. Colleagues dismissed my ideas until I had proof. But every misstep taught me more about strategy, persuasion, and patience. By the time I signed my first major client, a tech startup that had initially laughed at my pitch, I realized I was no longer the vulnerable girl in my mother's kitchen. Despite all this, I kept my success hidden. Social media showed only glimpses: a tasteful coffee shop post, a travel photo, a polite smile at a networking event. My family had no clue I was climbing steadily, making choices and decisions that would one day give me the power they had once denied me. At night, I would sit in my apartment, Clara's notebook open beside me, tracing the path I had forged. Each milestone felt like a secret triumph, a silent message to the woman who had told me to leave. I didn't just leave. I thrived. I created something beyond her imagination. And yet, there was a quiet part of me that wondered, would she ever recognize it? Or was this victory mine alone to savor? By the time I secured my first real office space, decorated with the first artwork I had ever purchased myself, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was building a life of elegance, autonomy, and purpose. A life where my choices belonged only to me. And in the quiet moments, as the city lights flickered outside my window, I allowed myself to dream bigger. This was only the beginning. It was a crisp Saturday morning when I finally decided it was time. Mom and Dad had called, insisting I join them for brunch, assuming I was struggling as I had for years. The last thing they expected was the life I had meticulously built, hidden from their eyes. I arrived at the downtown bistro, a discreet but chic location I had chosen intentionally. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor, a rhythm of confidence I had grown accustomed to. They were already seated when I walked in, Mom's expression polite, tinged with curiosity, and Dad's a mixture of pride and subtle doubt. I could see the old assumptions dancing behind their eyes, the belief that I was fragile, dependent, and perhaps a little lost. "Emily," Mom said, her voice warm, but tentative, as if she were greeting someone she barely recognized. I smiled, the kind of smile that carries years of patience and unspoken triumph. "Good morning," I said smoothly, sliding into the chair across from them. The brunch began normally, small talk over croissants and coffee, but I could feel their subtle glances. They were searching for cracks, for any sign that I had failed. And yet, as I spoke of my travels, my projects, and the occasional collaboration, I watched their expressions shift slowly from polite skepticism to genuine surprise. When the waiter placed our final course, I decided it was time. "There's something I want you both to see," I said, and I pulled out a sleek tablet from my bag. I tapped a few times, and images and numbers filled the screen. Our family home remodel I had funded, my startup's first major office, and the contracts I had quietly signed over the past 5 years. Mom's hand trembled slightly as she reached out. Dad leaned forward, eyes wide, disbelief etched across his face. I let the moment stretch, letting them take it all in. The office I had decorated, the art I had commissioned, the lifestyle I had created entirely on my own. "I didn't just leave your life," I said softly, my voice steady yet warm. "I built mine, and I've been building it without you. Every contract, every late night, every small victory, you never saw it coming because you never believed it could happen." Mom's lips parted slightly, a flush rising to her cheeks, and I saw the first glimmer of recognition, mingled with guilt. Dad's jaw tightened, but there was awe there too, undeniable and raw. "This isn't just about money or success," I continued, leaning back, feeling the power of my journey settle around me. "It's about independence, about proving to myself that I could thrive even when told I wasn't wanted." That rejection wasn't the end of my story. It was the catalyst for everything I've become. They remained silent, the weight of my words hanging between us like a tangible presence. I let them process, letting the room breathe with their astonishment. In that moment, I realized the truth. I had achieved what I set out to do. I had transformed the pain of being pushed away into a life of empowerment. And now, they had no choice but to witness it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same words that had hurt me once, the words that asked me to leave, had fueled my rise. And as they stared, stunned, I smiled quietly to myself, savoring the satisfaction that came not from revenge, but from undeniable, earned success. After the initial shock, the air between us shifted. No longer was I the uncertain, overlooked daughter. I was the one holding the cards, and they knew it. I could feel it in the way Mom avoided eye contact, in the hesitation in Dad's posture. This was my moment to redefine the terms, not out of spite, but out of necessity, for my own peace and growth. "I'm willing to help," I began, keeping my voice calm, measured. "But not on the same terms as before. If we are going to have a real relationship, things have to change." Mom's eyes widened, her lips forming the start of a protest, but I held up a hand. "No arguments. These are the conditions: honesty, respect, and accountability. I won't tolerate criticism disguised as advice, or guilt disguised as affection. If we continue, it will be as equals." I saw the flicker of understanding and fear cross her face. She had never experienced me standing firm before. "For Dad," I continued, "you've always wanted the perfect child, the perfect success story. But I'm my own person, and you will acknowledge that. You can support me, but you cannot control me. And you must confront your own need to be right before being loving." I paused, letting my words sink in, then added the most important condition: "And both of you need to embrace your own dreams. Stop waiting for me to fix your unhappiness. You are capable of pursuing your passions, your goals, without leaning on me for validation or approval." Mom's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Dad's jaw relaxed slightly, the tension easing from his shoulders. I could see the wheels turning, the slow recognition that change was necessary, and that I wasn't asking out of cruelty. I was asking because I had learned the hard way that love, without boundaries, is destructive. "These conditions," I said softly, "aren't punishments. They are the foundation for a healthier relationship. If you can meet them, we can rebuild. But if not," I let the sentence hang, unspoken, letting them understand the alternative. No compromise on my self-respect. No return to old patterns. I watched them carefully, gauging their reactions. There was guilt, yes, but also a spark of hope. I realized in that moment that the true power wasn't in wealth or success. It was in the ability to set boundaries, to insist on respect, and to demand growth from those who wished to remain in my life. And as I looked at the two people who had once asked me to leave, I felt no bitterness, only clarity. I was no longer subject to their expectations. The power had shifted, not as revenge, but as justice. I was not asking for their obedience. I was asking for their evolution. For the first time, I saw them not just as my parents, but as individuals who had the potential to change, if only they were willing to step forward with honesty, courage, and humility. And for me, that was enough. Weeks passed after that brunch, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to shift. Mom started taking small steps toward pursuing her passions, painting again, joining a local book club, reconnecting with friends she had long neglected. Dad enrolled in a weekend course on architecture, something he had always dreamed of but never pursued. Watching them move toward growth, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not pride in dominance, but in seeing people embrace their own potential. I, too, continued to build my life. My company expanded. The office became a place of creativity and purpose, and Clara remained my anchor, reminding me to celebrate the journey as much as the destination. Yet, even amid success, I never forgot the girl who had stepped out into the cold wind years ago, trembling but determined. That notebook from Grandma still sat on my shelf, worn and cherished, a symbol of resilience and guidance. Sometimes, late at night, I would open it, tracing the words that had once given me courage, feeling them echo through the life I had created. The relationships with my parents transformed as well. We were no longer trapped in old patterns of expectation and guilt. Our conversations were honest, at times raw, but filled with mutual respect. We laughed again, sometimes about old memories, sometimes about new achievements, but always with understanding that the past no longer dictated the present. I learned something profound through it all. Leaving was never a punishment. It was the first act of claiming my own power, and making them leave my life in spirit, by insisting on respect and boundaries, was not revenge. It was the ultimate form of love, for myself and, paradoxically, for them. On quiet mornings, sipping coffee in my sunlit apartment, I sometimes close my eyes and smile, thinking of that pivotal moment in the kitchen years ago. The pain, the rejection, the doubt, all of it had been the catalyst for the woman I had become. Strong, independent, compassionate, and unapologetically myself. And so, I carry forward, knowing that I have learned the most important lesson of all. Leaving does not always mean ending. Sometimes, it means beginning a life of self-respect, empowerment, and grace. I pick up Grandma's notebook one last time, tracing the familiar lines with my fingers, and whisper to myself, I left, I grew, I thrived. And in that quiet declaration, I find the truth I have always sought. I am enough. I am whole. I am mine.